And welcome back to another week of Who Would Win, and this comes to us from Adam Brownell. Brownell? Brownell. I know, Brownell, I believe it's pronounced. Correct me if I'm wrong. What's the question? In a vampire fight, who would win, Seras Victoria or Marceline from Adventure Time? I'll be honest, I actually never really got into Adventure Time. It was just never my thing. I'm very aware of Adventure Time, though, and I've done a couple of Adventure Time Who Would Wins in the past. I've done Seras Victoria as well. Seras Victoria, as we know from Helsing, was just a police girl who unfortunately got in the wrong place at the wrong time, but was taken pity on by Alucard to be his thrall. To be his, is it thrall? Or, I think it's thrall, right? I mean, he turned her into a vampire, is what it was. A thrall isn't technically a vampire, but that's semantics. It was the only living vampire since, he had woken up, sired by Alucard. And she did the best she could up until, a fateful moment in the series with Zoran Blitz. She had more physical enhancements than a normal human would have. She had enhanced vampire senses, including vision. She could go into blood range and massacre individuals. But she was somewhat resistant to mental attacks. But it wasn't until she fully embraced being a vampire, feeding on the fully consented blood of Pip, who was Pip Bernadotte, who was leader of the Flying Geese. At that moment, her true vampire form took in. In that form, and I think even to this day, she still has this weird ethereal black energy arm. I've never understood why it kind of never just regrew into a new arm after the fact, but she did just as an energy arm, whatever. But as the fully realized Seras Victoria, her physical abilities all went off the roof. She was capable, off the chart. She was capable of easily decimating other vampires with ease, with her teeth. Not even taking a punch, just biting them apart. She grinded Zoran Blitz into pulp. She could go toe to toe with a werewolf that was pretty much nigh invulnerable. Though even that was pushing it for her a little bit. She could withstand God knows how much damage at that point, including being stabbed, being shot, being literally blasted around, hit around. What's the term I'm looking for? Being continually hit by excessive force. Let's put it. Granted, she did have Alucard's regeneration is nuts, but it's not like his durability is equal. His body still gets torn apart. He just regenerates. It's the same thing with Seras. However, she also had the added benefit of that weird plasmic dark energy arm, which not only could act like an arm, but could act like a sentient liquid blade. She could stab the ground with her arm, make it move like thorns, then stab an individual. She could coat an entire building with this shadow, as it's kind of referred to, imbue Pip with it, and monitor an entire area. And as I just said, because as Pip stated, because you had my consent, my soul is now is in you. It's a part of you now. And so she's got familiars of her own. That said, she's still not infallible by any stretch of the means. She can still be overpowered by strong enough attacks. I don't think she would have been able to beat Alexander personally. And she really only lucked out by having access to silver. I think Captain something or other, I can't remember his name. But I think the werewolf even gave her the silver tooth that would enable her to kill him. She probably in a drawn-out fight would have actually lost against him. She should also, I don't know, they never show it, but she should also be able to survive sunlight like Alucard could by the end of it. Though that was never proven, I don't think. Beyond that, though, she's also an expert marksman, capable of using any weapon at her disposal. She's famous for having that giant F-off cannon, multiple automatic weaponries, and those giant F-off cannons that she had when she was fighting the blimp. Marceline, the Vampire Queen, is one of the main characters of Adventure Time. She's a rocker. She's often described as being somewhat immature, but at the same time, just because she's been around for so long, she's very emotional. She has a malevolent side, though. She has no problem being vicious and sinister when she's deprived of food. It's actually kind of a problem of hers. She can be sentimental as well, but she seems very emotional. She becomes very attached to friends and her loved ones. And hey, awesome sauce for queer representation in animated series where she is in a relationship with Princess Bubblegum. If I'm not mistaken, she is. She's in a relationship with who was it? Princess Bubblegum. And is currently Bonnie Belle's girlfriend again. So yeah, okay. Princess Bubblegum's real name is Bonnie Belle, I'm guessing. Yeah, that's it. Okay, yeah. So yeah, she and the princess are dating. Cool, awesome. But more to the point, what is she capable of? Well, vampires in this world have a lot of actual abilities, particularly her. Because of her demonic powers, she has inherited the ability to absorb souls and minor control over fire, as shown when she first took on stupid ad. God, it's so annoying sometimes. As shown what the hell? In minor control over fire, as shown in Invictid's first look at the Fire Kingdom and her use on candles. It's also implied by her farm world counterpart that her half-demon nature extended her lifespan, as the farm world Marceline was able to survive at least 1,000 years, albeit old and withered. She has absorbed the essence of several powerful vampires, allowing her to basically fly, turn invisible, gain the power to shapeshift into taking forms such as a bat, wolf, reptilian creature, large tentacle monster. She can even copy the form of other creatures if she has the time to study them. And from the moon, the ability to rapidly heal. She is immortal and unaging vampire as long as she isn't killed. She will live forever. She lit up we had talked about the candle feat. She can move things with her mind. She has telekinesis. She can raise the undead to serve her. She can fire red energy beams from her arms that are able to restrain people. As a result of absorbing the Vampire King's dark cloud half, she can now communicate with a miniature mental projection of him. That probably doesn't mean much here. Marceline was able to release the vampiric essence she absorbed from the Vampire King, transforming into a similar-looking black cloud form. In this state, she was powerful enough to defeat one of the creatures created by Golb, whatever that is. According to Ward, she's ambidextrous. Doesn't matter much in a fight. He's a very talented musician. Doesn't matter much in a fight. The Nightmare Amulet, when worn, the wearer gains the ability to shoot green lasers, which either vaporizes or transforms whatever they hit. This can also create or transform into a large cloud or blood mist. Marceline is capable of consuming the color red from an object she bites, while other objects itself remain physically unharmed. And that's the big thing here, is that she, as a vampire in their world, she actually doesn't need to feed on blood. She just needs to feed on, the pigment of red, per se. Which is funny, because I'm on, the fandom wiki, and they show those clips, and she's sitting on the red couch. So has she had to go through red couches before? But as a typical vampire weakness, she's very vulnerable to sunlight, as is common in vampire lore. But she does not dissolve right away. And the nuance to this is that she can actually be in the sun. She can't be in direct sunlight specifically. She's capable of unrestricted movement in a bright sunny day, provided she shields herself sufficiently, like her sun hat or a parasol, or she wears these gloves. According to Marceline, it's like moving around on a bright day still mildly hurts, comparable to scraping your knee, but it's bearable. Like a typical vampire, she can't see her own reflection. I don't really know how that's a weakness. She cannot digest syrup, which is interesting. Let me get some syrup! But whenever she doesn't consume enough red objects, she goes into a feral mode. In this state, she becomes more ravenous in this state, in which she becomes ravenous out of hunger. The rabid state subdues once she consumes a sufficient amount of red. So this is interesting, because Marceline has a lot more overall abilities in this series, but she also has a lot more direct weaknesses, from what we can tell. Like I said, because she's a fully realized vampire, like Alucard, she most likely is not. She could survive in the sunlight. It's tiring. Like Alucard even said, it's tiring being out during the day, but he can do it. And but tiring and being in pain are two different things. And he can be out in direct sunlight, and it's not a problem. We can assume Seras can do something at least similar. Now, maybe it still hurts her a little bit, but not anywhere near to the same degree as Marceline. Marceline still hurts even when she's covered up. If this fight, in theory, were to take place during the day, Marceline would be screwed because all Seras would have to do is whack away all of her sun protection, and she would burn. And that would be very problematic for Marceline. So that fight would go quick, no problem. But let's be fair. And that's with Marceline having all her other powers and probably being able to put to stress Seras a little bit in the fight. But let's say this fight takes place during the night, where unfortunately Marceline doesn't really have any straight up weaknesses that can be exploited beyond that. Who wins in the fight? Well, from a physical standpoint, it sounds, or at least comes off as, that Seras may have the physical advantage, but beyond her enhanced healing, which Marceline also has, and her ethereal dark energy arm, Marceline has a lot more abilities on her, and a lot more abilities that could actually hinder her in the fight. Invisibility shouldn't be too big of a problem. Flying is a little bit of an issue, definitely. Although we saw Seras can kind of do that too. But the red energy beams that fires from her arms that are able to restrain people, that could be a problem. Seras can't just turn into mist or anything as far as we know. She is also the ability to raise the dead. She could theoretically form an army to stop her. The ability to steal souls. Seras could probably go toe-to-toe with that ability, theoretically. The ability to fire with the Night Sphere Amulet. The Night Sphere Amulet, I think, is like the big issue right here. Because it can fire green lasers that vaporize or transform a target when whatever they hit. If those hit Seras does not have a good answer to that. That's the problem here. So what happens here? Well, what happens in a fight with them? Let's say somehow Hellsing and Adventure Time wind up in the same world, because they'd have to be. Seras maybe hears about a vampire. She goes to maybe check it out. This is an Elseworld scenario where this happened during the 30 years Alucard was gone. She says, she finds Marceline, and they talk for a while. In a realistic scenario, I think they probably could reach an amicable solution. Like, I don't think they truly would fight each other. Seras is a very reasonable person. However, that means very little here. And this is due to the fact that we have to have a fight. So Seras would most likely be the bigger aggressor. Now, Seras does bring something to the fight that Marceline just doesn't, and that's guns. A lot of guns. But apparently vampires in this series don't seem to have the same general weaknesses, although apparently it is stated that that vampires do have. She has a typical set of vampire weaknesses, including burned by sunlight and garlic. A stake through the heart will reduce a vampire to dust and effectively kill them. Additionally, the Hierophant has many of the old school vampire weaknesses, including inability to enter a house unless invited. Invited when he was knocked out and fell over, reduced to dust and bones. When he was knocked over and fell into a house uninvited, he reduced into dust and bones. Interestingly enough, it seems as though he willingly subjected himself to such a rule. Is claim to Marceline that vampires cannot beat ghosts. She described it as rock, paper, scissors. Interesting. The one problem, so she does have the typical weaknesses, but the problem here is none of these weaknesses matter in this fight, because Silver is not brought up on this. And that's the thing, if Silver and Holy Relics were brought up in here, Seras would really have a strong edge on her in this fight. Any gunshot wound she takes would be possibly life-threatening. But that's not the case here. Vampires in Adventure Time don't have a Silver weakness. And that's a problem. That's a big problem, actually. Now, granted, that's not to say these bullets probably still wouldn't hurt. They're not used to firearms in Adventure Time. Especially if she's getting, the big F-off cannon. That could really F up Marceline if she's not careful. The problem is Marceline does have the ability to just restrain Seras and vaporize her. So these guys will probably be duking it out for a little bit before, Marceline is firing off laser attacks at her, eventually restraining her and then hitting her and either vaporizing her or transforming her into something. And here's the kicker. If she were to transform her into something, like another animal or whatever, Seras can still keep fighting. In fact, being like a small rabbit, like with this little bunny arm that's all ethereal, and then just suddenly attacks her would be hilarious and be more difficult for her to deal with because now she's changed her into a smaller target. But if she just vaporizes her, then Seras is done, and there's nothing Seras can really do about vaporization. There just isn't. Alucard can't even do anything really about that because that's kind of, I don't know if that's existence erasure, but true like vaporizing would be a problem for both of those characters. So I ultimately would say Marceline probably holds enough of the edges that she would take the win. Seras would certainly be a difficult opponent for her because she does not possess any of the same weaknesses that Marceline has, per se. Yeah, though maybe the stake through the heart might still be a thing. We know it was kind of with Alucard back in the day. I will say this too: it is not impossible for Seras to win this at all because as we read, a stake through the heart will reduce a vampire to dust and effectively kill them. And Seras knows she's fought enough vampires to know this. So, in theory, if she were to stab her right through the heart, that in theory could do it. It's dependent on if you specifically need a stake or you just need to stab them through the heart. So, yeah, it'd be difficult. I think it'd be a difficult fight on both their parts, and both these girls could take the edge over the other in any given moment. I think, though, like I said, Marceline holds enough of the edges, including the ability to turn invisible and fly, which I think Seras can technically do, but we've seen Marceline do it more consistently. I will go Marceline, but Seras, I think, could definitely win. It all depends on circumstances and time. Like I said, if this took place during the day in a bright sunny day, Seras might be tired, but she could still do it, whereas Marceline could burn and vaporize without too much difficulty. And she would just be at a very big disadvantage in the day hours. That said, however, let me know what you think. Do you think Marceline or do you think Seras? Until then, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you later.